Our student speaker today is Audrey Edwards, Bachelor of Arts degree candidate in International Business and Spanish. Audrey has demonstrated leadership and a deep commitment to the university's Catholic Franciscan tradition during her time at Stritch. A letter written by Audrey and signed by 60 fellow students to the immediate past president and the board of trustees described the need for a larger chapel on campus. It was her letter that renewed the desire for a permanent chapel first expressed by the sisters in 1962. And her efforts, along with those of her colleagues, resulted in the beautiful new St. Francis of Assisi Chapel on our main campus. I am pleased to introduce to you today Audrey Edwards.
Thank you very much, Dr. Loftus. My fellow graduates, the Cardinal Stritch University class of 2013, today is the day the next chapter of our lives begins. We are being called to go forth, to love and to serve the Lord by following the path which is laid down before us. Whether it has taken us 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, or nearly a lifetime to arrive at this glorious moment and achieve our degrees, know that this is all a part of God's plan for us. In the 12th century, God made his plan known to Francis by speaking these simple words: "Go and rebuild my church, which has fallen into ruin." St. Francis took these words very literally, and he began to repair the broken down, dilapidated, and tiny church of San Damiano in Assisi, Italy. He began to physically rebuild and repair the church. And as he did, he began to understand the true meaning God had intended for him through these words. This was the moment when St. Francis began the Franciscan order, the order and the faith tradition upon which this university was created. Not only are we deeply rooted in the Catholic tradition, but also are we deeply rooted in the Franciscan heritage here at Stritch. The Cardinal Stritch University community is one that places just as much importance on the education that you will receive as it does on faith and spirituality. The San Damiano cross is what led me to Cardinal Stritch 4 short years ago. Once here, just like Francis, I too heard the call from God to go and rebuild the church. When I arrived at Stritch in August of 2009, I quickly realized there was not a sufficient amount of space for students to practice their faith traditions. Being involved with the campus ministry, I watched as the number of students, staff, and faculty who wanted to practice their faith traditions continued to grow. Our little chapel on campus was bursting at the seams, and I felt called to action. I knew the story of St. Francis of the San Damiano Cross, and I also took the words, "Go and rebuild my church, which has fallen into ruin," quite literally, just as Francis did centuries ago. I wrote a letter, I put out a petition of support, and presented to the university authorities the many reasons why we needed a larger chapel here on campus. Initially, I was informed that there was no money in the budget for a new chapel to be built, but the interim president assured me that my letter and petition would be kept on file. The only words of encouragement were that maybe someday a chapel would be constructed on campus. Time passed, and all I could do was pray that God would enable a chapel to be built. A few months went by, and the prayer was finally answered. The St. Francis of Assisi Chapel was built, and it was dedicated on the feast day of St. Francis, October 4th, 2011. Many people contributed to this rebuilding, one of whom is with us today. On behalf of the Cardinal Stritch community, we would like to thank Dr. and Mrs. Koskett, who we honor today. Although I was extremely pleased and blessed to see this example of physically rebuilding the church unfold in my own life here at Stritch, and seeing how great this worship space has been for the university, I would like to remind you, my fellow graduates, that we are being called to so much more than physical and spoken examples of our faith. St. Francis professed, "Preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words." The Cardinal Stritch community has taught us to live this message and to emulate the lifestyles and teachings of St. Clare and St. Francis of Assisi. Whether we are building a house on a Habitat for Humanity spring break trip, or whether we are serving on the food line at the St. Ben's Meal Program downtown, or whether we are passing time with the homeless at Repairs of the Breach, we are serving the gospel through our actions. We have also been called to demonstrate and exhibit the four Franciscan values, which are universal human values: creating a caring community, peacemaking, reverence for all of creation, and showing compassion. These four values can be seen in action at any given moment as you walk through the halls of Cardinal Stritch. I never imagined being in a place as kind and caring as Cardinal Stritch University. I know that as we go forth and leave our time at Stritch behind, we will always be welcomed with open arms and love in the Stritch community. During this, our final semester as students here at Stritch, we were able to witness a monumental moment in the church: the election of a new pope as the Pope Emeritus Benedict stepped down in February. As with every papal election, we never know what God has in store for us. This time around, I was finally old enough to understand what the conclave was all about, and I followed it very closely. Never did I expect that after 5 votes, the Cardinals would have chosen Jorge Mario Bergoglio to be our new pope, and I could have never fathomed that he would choose the name Francis. This simple and humble man from Argentina broke tradition in so many ways when he became our Holy Father in March. When he chose the name Francis, everyone at Stritch was proud of his decision, regardless of which faith tradition they are from. Pope Francis advocates for the same issues that St. Francis of Assisi did many centuries ago. He calls us to minister and reach out to the poor and needy. He calls us to be stewards of creation and advocates of equality for all of humanity. He calls us to love one another, to pray for one another, and to help one another. My fellow graduates, as we stand here before our family and friends today, as we are about to accept our diplomas for which we have worked so hard during our time at Stritch, I too would like to challenge you and ask you to go forward on this day with more than just your degree. I challenge you to follow in the footsteps of St. Francis and St. Clare of Assisi, as well as Pope Francis, and to carry with you the four Franciscan values and all that you have learned in your time here at Stritch. I challenge you to stand up for what you believe in and be advocates for what is right and necessary in our world. I call you to rebuild God's church, which has fallen into ruin, and to show society that we must love one another and the earth on which we live. We must minister to the poor, to those in need, to serve the lepers in our lives, just as Francis did over 800 years ago. In whatever field or on whatever path you may go down after today, bring the Franciscan values with you. Preach the gospel at all times and when necessary use words. Pope Francis, despite his age, is active on Twitter, and my favorite tweet of his was from March 19th. He said, "Let us keep a place for Christ in our lives. Let us care for one another, and let us be loving custodians of creation." As we go forth today, diploma in hand and gigantic smiles on our faces, let us not forget the Franciscan influence from our time at Stritch. May we keep Christ in our lives, and no matter our faith tradition, may we care for one another, be reverent of creation, and take this world by storm, because it's the class of 2013 from Cardinal Stritch University. I'm certain that we have the tools and the know-how to go forth and to make a difference. Congratulations on this momentous achievement. Peace and all good.